I need us all to take a second and appreciate how cute my dogs are. How cute. Marvel's got his little bandana on. You're so handsome. You look so handsome. Okay, back to regularly scheduled. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be a look at old ratings. I'm going to be going through some of the books that I've given 5 stars and see if I really feel like they are still 5. We're just going to ignore the state of my shelves because I'm moving soon, and so I don't know what I'm going to do with all of these books when we move, but things are going to change when we move, and I just really can't think about it right now. So this is just the way that it is. My idea for this video I've had for a while, but I've been tracking my reading on Goodreads now since 2019, I believe. I think I actually started tracking it in 2020, but I inputted old ratings that I gave on my Instagram, which will be linked down below. It's always linked down below. So I have all of my ratings in Goodreads from 2019 on, and I just thought it'd be fun to take a look at some of the books that I've given 5 stars. There's almost 70 of them, so I'm not gonna go through every single one in this video, or I'm not gonna make you sit through every single one. I will edit and figure out what is interesting and what is not interesting, but I'm just gonna start at the top of where Goodreads has it. I don't know why it is in the order that it is in, but we're just gonna go through it. I'm gonna let you know whether something is still 5 stars, if I even remember what the something is about, because I have a feeling there's gonna be some books that I gave 5 stars to that I have not thought about since I read them, and also that I don't recall much about what they're about. But starting at the top, we have The Sea of Monsters, which is the second book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. I gave the first and second book of this 5 stars upon reread. I read these books originally when I was a kid. I think I was in middle school, and I never finished the series, which is why I am rereading them currently. I just talked about the third one in my May wrap-up, so I will link that for you. I think it's over here. Maybe over here? I think it's over here. I will link it for you. I will link it for you so you can watch that if you want to hear my thoughts, but I did end up giving that one 4 stars, and I said in that video that it was because I didn't feel as nostalgic about it as I did the first 2. I really strongly remembered the first 2, so these are 5-star books to me, but I think a big part of the reason why they are 5 stars is because I have strong feelings from when I read them the first time, and I really enjoyed getting to sort of relive being 12. I don't know. The next one on here is Mistborn, The Final Empire, which is the first in the Mistborn trilogy. I don't recall if I gave all of them 5 stars. I think I gave at least the first one 5 stars, obviously, and I want to say I gave all of them 5 stars, but I could be wrong about that. The series as a whole is definitely a 5-star series for me. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and this was on my favorite books of 2021, so it is not that old. Or I read it semi-recently compared to some of the other ones that we're going to see on here. But yeah, I think that definitely holds up as a 5-star. 2001: A Space Odyssey was one of my favorite books of 2020. It was the first time that I read that. That's a classic sci-fi, and I gave that one 5 stars. And then the sequel, I gave 2 stars, maybe 3 stars. I can't remember. I read it last summer. And the sequel's not very memorable to me, but the first one is very memorable to me, at least in the feeling that the atmosphere and the rating gave me. I'm not sure if it would still be 5 stars if I read it today. Next, we have The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, which was the last book that I read in 2020, and I said I was going to put it in my 2021 favorites because I did my 2020 favorites in early December, and I hadn't read this book yet, but I decided to not do that because I wanted it to just be books I read in 2021, so I did my 2021 favorites in January of 2022. I hope you're tracking. Poisonwood Bible is a book that I really loved. It's about a missionary family from South Carolina who goes to the Congo just before the Congo becomes the Democratic Republic of Congo, or just before they get their independence from Belgium, I think is who colonized Congo. I could be wrong about that. But it's a really interesting look about the cultural differences between America and the Congo at the time, and then also into the family dynamics and morality. And I don't know if that would be a 5-star either, but I definitely loved it when I read it. Then we have Looking for Alaska, which is a book that I read in 4th grade, which is too young to have read it, but I read it again in high school when I was going through a big John Green phase. I read all of his books again, and I actually still own all of them. Looking for Alaska is another book that is 5 stars because of how much I loved it at the time and how much it impacted me when I read it. Both times that I read it, I absolutely loved it, and I really, really, really felt connected to both Miles and Alaska, the main characters. And I also really liked the TV show. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion. I've heard a bunch of people say they didn't like the show. I really liked it. It does change things from the book, but I felt like they were necessary changes. Yeah, I stand by that. I don't know if I would stand by recommending adults read that. And honestly, I don't even know if I would stand by recommending young adults read that, but it is a book that is very special to me. So next we have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which I read in junior high, and I'm pretty sure I only listed it as 5 stars on here because I remember enjoying it and I remember what it was about, which is more than I can say for most books that I read in junior high. So I don't know if that one stands up or not. I don't really have any strong feelings about that, but I do think it's like a good classic, and if you want to read it, I think you should. Call Me By Your Name is on here as well. Interestingly enough, I liked the film more than I liked the book, but I loved the book, and then I watched the movie and I was like, oh no, this is better. So I don't think I will ever revisit Call Me By Your Name in book form, but I do rewatch the movie occasionally. It's a beautiful film. Next we have Life of Pi, which I gave 5 stars. Honestly, I don't remember much about what happens in Life of Pi. And I think I only read that last year. So perhaps not a 5-star read, but I don't think about it very much. Cat's Cradle, I really loved when I read it. I honestly don't remember much about that either, but I just remember finding it like very funny and easy to read, and it made me want to read everything that Kurt Vonnegut has ever written. And then I read another Kurt Vonnegut book and did not like it nearly as much. So questionable, maybe, still. Their Eyes Were Watching God, another book that I read in junior high or high school for school, and I gave 5 stars because it's one of those books that like really impacted me. I am due for a reread of this because I don't remember much about it, but I feel like this one would hold up. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I don't know if this book would hold up. I never continued in the series. I don't really care about continuing in the series now, but I absolutely love this book. It's another book that I read in high school that I just remembered having read, so I put my rating in here. That's interesting. All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy is one of my favorite books of all time. It's definitely one of my favorite classics for sure. And I do remember a lot about that. I remember how emotional that made me, and I stand by that being 5 stars. Okay, now, yep, I did give all the Mistborn trilogy 5 stars. We're coming up on Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. There are a couple of memoirs in here that I read and loved when I read them, but I have since heard criticisms of them. Educated is another one, which I stand by both of these recommendations, but I've read criticisms of both of them, of people thinking that parts of them are made up. And Educated in particular, I saw one criticism, because I'm not going to argue with someone about whether their life story really happened the way that they say it happened, but the criticism I saw of Educated, which is Tara Westover's memoir about growing up in she's not even in a sect of the Mormon church. Her family is just very particular about their beliefs. Like, they don't believe in the government being involved in their lives, so they don't go to hospitals. They don't believe in public schooling or any schooling. All the kids were homeschooled. And her parents just put her in very dangerous situations from the time she was a child on, and did things that they believed were correct, but objectively weren't. It's about her, like, breaking out of that. So it's mostly about her childhood, but also it's a large part about how she went to college and then went to grad school and then got a PhD and like learned so much about the world, and how her childhood impacted the way that she learned about the world. It's a very interesting book, especially if you like cult things, because her family's not in a cult, but I feel like if you like cult stuff, you would also like that. The criticism that I heard about that book, though, was someone said that they feel like for a memoir to be truly impactful, you have to be able to like look back at your own experiences with like a hint of, I don't even know what word they used, but like you have to, not objectivity, but you have to be like past the point in your life where that has happened. Otherwise it's just like a diary and it's not like you're really reflecting on things. And someone said that they felt like she was still so close to all of the tragedy that had happened to her, and she hadn't done enough work by way of healing, which again, I did not say any of that. But I did think that was an interesting criticism of that book, because you can tell in the book that she's still very heavily impacted by it. And like, she'll probably always be heavily impacted by it. I don't know how exactly to like phrase this, but it's like she wasn't looking back on her life as like, these are things that happened to me, here's how they happened. It was very like impassioned, which is part of what I liked about it, but I just thought that was an interesting criticism of that one. We have A Tale of Two Cities, which if you don't know is my all-time favorite book, I'm pretty sure still, by Charles Dickens. I've read that multiple times. I love that book. It definitely holds up for me. Next we have The Da Vinci Code, another one that I don't know if I would still think was 5 stars if I read it today. I actually got the rest of the series. You can see it like right here, because I only ever read the first and second one, and there's 5 or 6 books in that series, I think. 5, I guess. The Lost Symbol, The Lost Symbol, Inferno, and Origin are the 3 that I have left to read, and I've thought about going back and rereading the first 2 as well, which is Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code, which both of those I have listed as 5 stars on Goodreads, but again, they're books I read in high school and remembered really liking. I don't know if I would still give them 5 stars today. Pride and Prejudice, definitely a 5-star read. I reread this last year. It's incredible. I'll link the live show where I discussed it with my friend Amanda. I don't remember who else was on that live show, but there were a couple other people who participated sporadically in a couple of the live shows. Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, I read last year. I stand by it. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott was one of those books that I gave 5 stars because I love the story so much. I don't know that the book in particular was 5 stars. I'll let you chew on that because I don't really know what I'm saying with that either. I'm going to try to scooch through and find some that I read more than a year ago because I feel like the ones that I read in the last year are going to be 5 stars. Another John Green, Will Grayson. This one is John Green and David Leviathan, I think. They co-wrote, and one of them got one of the Will Graysons, and the other one wrote the perspective of the other Will Grayson. This is another one that I don't know if it would stand up, but there's a couple of things from this book that just like stick in my mind and live there rent-free, and it definitely impacted me a lot as a teenager, so I'm leaving it for that reason. I'm also not going to change any of the ratings unless I reread the book, and then I will change the rating if I feel it's necessary. So, Packing for Mars is a nonfiction that I read over a year ago, and I loved it. I stand by it. Gone Girl by Gillian or Gillian Flynn. I know a girl who spells her name the same way and pronounces it Jillian, but I feel like people pronounce this Gillian, so I'm not sure. But Gone Girl, again, I read in high school, or maybe my freshman year of college. I read it the year that the movie came out. So whatever year the movie came out, I read the book like right before seeing the movie. And I think I was in college when the movie came out because I think I remember going home and watching it with my brother over like winter break or something. But Gone Girl, I just remember being so like enthralled. I had no idea what was going to happen. And there's like a couple of twists throughout the book, and all of the twists got me. I don't know, again, I read more mystery thrillers, or I have read more mystery thrillers since that, and I don't know how unique that was at the time, but for me it was revolutionary. Brother by David Shariandi was one of my like runner-ups for best book of last year. I stand by this. I read it, I think, in January of 2021, and it broke my heart, and I loved it. It's so beautifully written. I do stand by that. A horror book that was one of my favorite books of 2020 is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This book, I think, is too long. I gave it 5 stars because I really did like it, but I don't know that I would reread it for the reason that it is too long. I also know what's happening, and there's a lot of like really weird stuff in it that I don't know if it stands up to the 5-star rating, but I do remember just being like blown away when I read it, so I'll leave it for now. Same to Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. I read this one in 2020 as well, and I felt so like enthralled with the story. I keep saying that, but I just like wanted to keep reading, but I don't know if I read this one again, especially right now because of the way that I feel about historical fiction, and this is like historical fiction with like a time loop element. I don't know if it would hold up for me. The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I think I gave all of these, I think I gave the first and the second 5 stars and the third one 4 stars maybe, but I do love these books, and they're some of my favorite hard science fiction. Again, I don't know if I could ever commit to rereading them, but maybe at one point I will. Here's another interesting one, a memoir, In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. This is another one where the more I found out about the person who actually wrote this book, it's about a girl whose family gets out of North Korea by way of China and like sex trafficking and all sorts of things. Apparently, the author has kind of problematic views. I've not looked too much into it, but my partner has sort of looked into it and told me about it. So I don't know if that would affect if I watched any more interviews, if that would affect my rating, but for now it does not. The Astonishing Color of After, another one of my favorite books of 2020. I actually have the author's second release that came out this year. I bought it when I was in Seattle from a little bookstore, and I'm extremely excited to read that because of how much I loved The Astonishing Color of After. I don't know if I would still love The Astonishing Color of After if I read it now, but I have a feeling if I love this, I will have my answer. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I recently watched the show for this one as well. This was another one of my favorite books of 2021, and I read it in like January or March. It was in March. I read it in March. But I meant like the early half of last year, or early first quarter. But I absolutely loved this book, and I did not expect to because of the subject matter and because my previous experience with Sally Rooney was Normal People, which I liked, but honestly thought was just okay. I will say though, Normal People is one of those books that I gave 3 stars, but I think about them being Marianne and Connell, the characters from Normal People, all of the time. I will say I would rewatch the show before I reread the book, And I still felt like the show and the book had the same issues where it was like boring at a certain point, but the general premise is something that I like. So I would like to find a book that has the same premise, but I like better, if that makes sense. But Conversation with Friends, I was like enthralled and like stuck with it the whole time and really interested and cared deeply about the characters in a way that I didn't care about Marianne and Connell. I cared about them as a couple, kind of, and I didn't really care about their relationships independent of each other, if that makes sense. Whereas Conversation with Friends, I felt really connected to Frances when I read the book. Now, I will say, watching the show, Frances was my least favorite character, and I don't think the actress did a bad job at all, and it's not that I dislike her portrayal of Frances, but it was like, I don't know, I felt like I related to Frances because a lot of the ways she handled things was ways that I would handle things, but watching her do that versus reading her do that and understanding her thought process and being like, okay, yeah, that's how my brain works too, watching it occur and realizing like, no, that's not working was bonkers. So I wanted to do a like book versus movie review on that, but I didn't, obviously, but I did watch it and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that, but this stays with 5 stars. The next one, The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I think if I read this today, I would not give it 5 stars. Just because it uses like one of the tropes that's like very overused, which is like the drunk female protagonist who can't remember things because she's drunk all the time. Okay, here's another one. Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. Is that the lady who wrote the sentence that was nominated for the shortlist? Yeah. I didn't realize I'd read something by her. This is one of those books. It's like a dystopian, I would say. I would say for fans of like The Handmaid's Tale, you might enjoy this, which I like The Handmaid's Tale a lot. I think that's probably on this list somewhere. But Future Home of the Living God, I remember it got 4 stars on Copile, but I rounded it up because I thought it had had a really big impact on me, but it's another one of those books that like, looking back on it, I don't know if I should have given it 5 stars, and I don't know if I agree with my 5-star rating, if that makes sense. It's a great book, but I think the amount of qualms I had with it would have justified lowering it to a 4-star, if that makes sense. Heartspring Mountain is a book by, Heartspring Mountain by Robin MacArthur is a book that I read in 2019, and honestly, that was probably my favorite book of 2019. It's like a family story about, I think it's Vermont maybe, or Connecticut, I can't remember, it's somewhere in the Northeast. There's a big opioids crisis up there and like a heroin epidemic. Just a lot of the dynamics reminded me of my family. And like, I don't know, my mom's upbringing, because it sort of goes through like 3 generations living in this town. And I really loved that book. It really impacted me. I don't know how it would hold up on reread. I think probably still pretty well, honestly. I really enjoyed that book, and I feel like no one really talks about it. But that was one of my favorite books of 2019, I think. It obviously left a big impression on me. What Should Be Wild, one of my favorite books of 2020. I think this would hold up on reread. I have not reread it since I read it the first time, but I do think it would hold up. The Book of M by Peng Shepherd. Again, I think this one would hold up. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I loved it. I would recommend it. Middle Game. I kind of want to reread. I had people buy it for me for my birthday last year, and I got a copy from Matt and from my parents, and I have not reread it yet, even though I got it because I wanted to reread it. That was my favorite book of 2020, and I do need to reread it at some point. I think it would hold up, though. I really do. I really think it would. This is How You Lose the Time War. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mutar, and then there's another author, but I can only see one on this page, and I don't remember. Max Gladstone, is that his name? That might be his name. But this is the one that's like told between 2 time-traveling agents on opposite sides, and it's like a sapphic love story between them. Honestly, I still feel like I didn't really understand this book, and I almost think I gave it 5 stars because of the hype, but I did cry when I read it, which is the other reason I gave it 5 stars, so I don't know how this would hold up on reread. And I have no intention of rereading it. I'm just going to live in mystery of that for the rest of my life, I think. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I, again, am not sure if that would hold up because I read another Naomi Novik last year and really did not like it very much. I gave it 3 stars because the ending intrigued me. And I will continue the series, but it was a solid 2-star throughout pretty much. So I'm curious if I would like Spinning Silver on reread. I don't know. The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I think I gave all 3 of her books in the Kiss Quotient series 5 stars, and I do think they hold up. They're my favorite romances to date. The Bride Test, I think, is my favorite of the 3, followed by The Heart Principle, which is the last one, and then The Kiss Quotient is my least favorite, but I gave it 5 stars because of how much I loved the other ones, which maybe isn't fair, but I also loved it. I just didn't love it as much, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay, next I have The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, which is a Turn of the Screw retelling, and I think I would love this. I don't know if I would love it on reread because it is a thriller and I already sort of know what happens. I've seen some really good criticisms of it. I still loved it, and I think for me it holds up as a 5 star, but I don't think of it, well, I actually think of it pretty often. Maybe I will reread it at some point and let you know. Heartstopper Volume 1 and 2, I gave 5 stars. I gave Volume 3 4 stars. I don't know, I want to continue reading them, but I don't know if they'll have the same impact for me. I love the show. Again, another TV show adaptation that I really love. I honestly will rewatch the show at some point probably. But they're just like fun and easy and like easy breezy beautiful, very touching. I just love it, you know? Okay, here's one that I don't remember very much about it. It's a short story collection called Song for the Unraveling World. Song for the Unraveling of the World by Brian Evanson. This is one that I read in 2019, and obviously I loved it. I think it's a horror short story collection, but I don't remember any of the individual stories. Contrast this with a book that I read in 2020, Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory by Raphael Bob Waxberg, where I remember at least 3 of the short stories, but this one I loved far, far more, I think. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those where short stories are tricky for me because if one really like sticks out to me, I am tempted to give the whole collection 5 stars, but I just think it's funny that like the one I read a year prior, I read it in June 2019 versus November 2020, I guess like a year and a half, but I have no memory of it, so I don't know. I was expecting there to be more books, honestly, that I didn't remember very much about, but I guess I have to give it some time. High Fire by Owen Colfer, I think is how his name is pronounced, the guy who wrote Artemis Fowl. I don't think this is actually a 5-star read for me. I gave this 5 stars, and I really enjoyed my read of it. I think realistically it's more of like a 4-star, but I had a good time reading it, which is why I gave it 5 stars. I think at the time, too, I was reading like 3-star books and DNFing things a lot, so I found one that I was like, finally, this is good. I gave it 5 stars. This, I think, they're making a movie where Nicolas Cage, I think, is going to play the, like, alligator slash dragon. I think it's a dragon. So that'll be interesting. Another 2020 read, we have Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I stand by this. I think this was a 5-star read for me. I loved the audiobook. It made me cry. I just think it was great. If I Never Met You by Veery McFarlane. I didn't talk about The Hating Game because I do stand by that. This is another one that I read last summer that didn't make my top favorites of the year, but I do stand by my 5-star rating. I really, really, really loved that book. It's an office romance with fake dating after a woman and her partner of like 18 years break up, and the partner gets someone else pregnant almost immediately, even though he broke up with her because he didn't want to have babies and she was ready to have kids, which is just horrible. And so she fake dates another guy who works at the same law firm that she works at. And I love that book too. So I stand by that. Amari and the Night Brothers, I stand by my 5-star rating. I absolutely loved that book, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out later this year. And that's it of all the books that weren't like this year, or like within the last 6 months. And I think I said I stood by most of my ratings. So I'm kind of surprised that I remember what all of these are about as like distinctly as I do. There is one nonfiction that I read earlier this year called Autopsy of a Crime Lab that I ended up giving 5 stars, even though I think realistically that's like a 3-star book. I thought it was really interesting and well researched, but it wasn't like the best thing I've ever read on that topic. But I do like give different ratings to nonfiction than I do to fiction books. So fiction books, if I love it, it's a 5-star read. Nonfiction, if I feel like there's no problems with it, it's a 5-star read. That one I didn't feel like I had any problems with, so it got 5 stars. But I don't feel any sort of type of way about it. So that is it on this little journey back through my 5-star reads over the past, pretty much my whole life that I can remember, but specifically the past like 3 years. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about books that you've given 5 stars. Have you ever changed your mind about a star rating after you, like long after you finish reading a book? Let me know. If you made it to this point of the video, comment a star emoji down below for star ratings. And thank you so much for watching. You can like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you would like to see more content from me, because I do try to post at least 1, if not 2 videos a week, and I'll see you in the next one.